All
Hello,
right.
everyone.
Hello. Welcome to Overruled Podcast.
Welcome. The first episode where we know our name. That's cool.
Yep, indeed. All right. Today we're going to be doing new 2D Marios versus old 2D Marios.
Yeah, this is an interesting topic because both of us are, we've played the new ones a lot.
We've also played the old ones a lot, true.
We have played the old ones, but less.
Yeah.
Especially stuff like Mario Bros. 2
Yeah.
and Lost Levels. We played a little bit of Lost Levels, but... Okay. You ready to get the debate started?
Yeah, we should probably say what side we're on. I'm going
I
to
am-
be... You can go first.
I'll go. I'm doing old 2D games, which is
right.
everything before New Super Mario Bros.
Yeah, so like, Mario Bros. 1, Mario Bros. 3...
Yeah.
Mario World, and I'm doing mainly just the New Super Mario Bros. Series, pretty much. So yeah, I'll be starting with the opening statements here. So, 3, 2, 1, go. All right.
Go.
The new 2D Mario series, in my opinion, offers the perfect mix of revolutionary elements and refinement to make them exceptionally polished games on the whole. With New Super Mario Bros. DS being among the greatest platformers of all time. And also, it basically revised the series after an almost 15-year drought from Super Mario Land 2.
Super Mario Land 2. When was that released?
1992.
Wow.
And New Super Mario Bros. Was in 2006.
That is pretty long, yeah. Well, while the new 2D games are pretty fun, it's clear that people... It got really old by the end, and the old 2D games, the amount of creativity and innovation that went into each one of them really set the stage and, allowed the new Super Mario games to be what they wanted to be, or to be what they could be, and, it's, it's not really comparable how much each old 2D game improved versus the new ones.
Yeah, you could argue...
In my opinion, they got worse as for each game.
Perhaps, although that could just be because the new 2D Marios being the refinement of the older ones that, you simply got, accustomed to what the new 2D series was, and you kind of, as, a gamer, kind of found new interests. I imagine that if you would perhaps play them in a different order, you might have a slightly different opinion on, how good they are. With New Super Mario Bros. U, for example, although it was on the Wii U, which did not sell that well, the popular opinion is that New Super Mario Bros. U is actually a very polished and very good game, and, I actually find the game to be very visually appealing as well, with the Van Gogh-inspired level, Painted Swampland, in World 5 being probably the most beautiful level I've seen in any 2D Mario game.
Yeah, and I want to actually disagree that Mario Bros. U actually uses level design really creatively and has a lot of visually appealing aspects and is extremely polished, because they spent 3 years on that compared to 2 years spent on Mario Bros. 3, I believe, or Mario World, one of them. But I think my feelings about you kind of... I found this quote from Giant Bomb review that kind of encapsulates my feelings, and it said, is it possible that this is the best game in the new series to date and the best exclusive Wii U games, one of the best exclusive Wii U games, and at the same time flatly uninteresting? Apparently so. And it's kind of like, it kind of describes how New Super Mario Bros. Has gotten a degree of irony because there's nothing interesting about the game. It's a good game. There's nothing interesting about it. And in my opinion, New Super Mario Bros. U is the reason. It contributes to why we haven't had a new 2D game in 8 years.
Perhaps. But I would also argue that it was good enough to be ported to the Switch, where it sold very well. And on top of that, the old 2D series is not without its duds. Lost Levels and Super Mario Bros. 2, in my opinion, don't hold up anywhere near as well as the other games. They're very frustrating at times and can be kind of painful, especially Lost Levels just offering straight up trolls to you, as the player. It's unless you're really, really good at Mario, the challenge is just not enjoyable. And speaking of, not changing much, Lost Levels really did not do anything on top of the original Super Mario Bros. Formula. It was literally exactly the same game, just with different levels. Whereas Super Mario Bros. 2 has a different problem. It tried to, well, it was basically just a carbon copy of Doki Doki Panic turned into a Mario game. But the issue is that all of the changes in Doki Doki Panic didn't make it feel like much of a Mario game at all, and that while it did bring some new characters to the series, it really just, playing it from a modern perspective, you can just see a lot of the design choices and why they didn't stick around to later Mario games.
Yeah, you can. I mean, Lost Levels, they realized that it wasn't great, and they didn't actually port it to, well, it called Super Mario Bros. 2 in Japan, but they didn't actually port Super Mario Bros. 2 Japan. They didn't bring it over to the US because they're like, oh, this sucks. But like the amount, like, for me, I kind of, and a lot of people kind of put those two games in a separate category. And because the old 2D games really, like, if you look at Mario Bros. 1, yeah, they had two duds right after that. But Mario Bros. 3 was still on the NES. They released two amazing games on the same console, and none of the new Super Mario Bros. Games, none of the new Super Mario Bros. Games were on the same console, and they released two amazing games on the exact same console. Even with, you can, you know, it's kind of enough to ignore those two games because they were made so quickly that it's like you still got Mario Bros. 3 really quickly after that. So it's, I think, for a lot of people, you just don't really think about those games, but yes, they are definitely duds. But yeah, as you said, Mario Bros. 2 still contributed in a way.
Yeah. And another thing that I, very much appreciate about the new 2D games is star coins, because star coins greatly increase the amount of stuff that you can do within each game. With the older games, because of the lack of save files in the most early ones, you really have to start a new attempt at the game every single time, and so they didn't really have much space to put a ton of hidden collectibles that actually mean something. Basically, you just beat the game, maybe you found a secret exit, but each level was basically just self-contained, and you only had really one goal, making them very, very linear. Star coins, on the other hand, they let you replay levels if you haven't found them. They offer a greater, they allow you to play the game in several different ways. You don't have to get them, but if you're a completionist, they really let you get so much more out of each individual game, instead of forcing you to play them over and over and over again by, not allowing you to have a save file.
Well, by Mario World, they had figured out save files, and you can't really blame them for not having save files. But star coins do increase the replayability. Yeah. That is definitely true. But the older games, you can't really knock them for that, because by Mario World, they already had figured out this amazing secret exit system and a ton of collectibles. Dragon coins, they're not
Dragon coins aren't quite the same, because
Dragon coins at least are hidden stuff, and there's plenty of hidden stuff in Mario World. To me, star coins do feel like an artificial, like, they're cool, but as far as pure, like, exploration, having to collect things, these like hidden things to unlock stuff like that, like, the only secret in, like, the only Mario World still was able to do that without having you to collect these weird things.
But on that point, you still, in order to unlock a bunch of levels in Mario World, you still need to find the secret exits, and the secret exits in Mario World can be really stupid and hard to find sometimes. And I agree that some of them, star coins in the newer games, are also hard to find, but you can't really make the argument that Mario World did that well without, because it's basically the same idea with both things, so you can't really argue that it's bad game design to have these things that you need to collect to unlock new levels, while also saying that Mario World just did it really well.
Star coins just aren't, like, revolutionary or anything. And what's great about Mario World is that there are so many different paths in the you can take there's two secret worlds in Mario Bros. DS, but in Mario World you can take like 8 different paths through the game if you want by doing secret exits. And if you don't want to do one secret exit, you don't have to. You can still do a secret exit in the next thing. And there's an insane amount of like non-linearity in that game.
I would argue that the new games have just as much because they also have a bunch of secret exits, also a bunch of secret worlds, especially like
but it's
New Super Mario Bros.
It's
2.
like
Um,
I'm not arguing that they're less linear, but like in a different way, kind of like with Mario World, it's an entire world, not just a straight progression. And everything's linked together.
I don't think you can make that argument because the new games have the same thing. In fact, New Super Mario Bros. U literally has one world map, whereas Mario World doesn't. In New Super Mario Bros. U, there's a bunch of interconnecting paths. So I will very much agree that Mario World decreased the amount of linearity in the 2D Mario series, but it's not like that amount of linearity increased in the later games. It it either stayed the same or maybe even decreased a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the main reason why the old 2D games have grown on me is I've kind of realized that on every Mario Bros. 1, Mario Bros. 3, and Mario World, all were like the top selling games on the consoles. Mario World was the top on SNES. Mario Bros. Was 1, and Mario 3 was 3rd after Duck Hunt, obviously. And then New Super Mario Bros. Was the highest on the DS. And 2D Mario games have dominated every console. But by the end of the New Super Mario Bros. Cycle, New Super Mario Bros. U almost gets outsold by Nintendo Land. And
it's because Nintendo Land came with the console.
And
Wii Sports Resort also sold ridiculously high.
New Super Mario Bros. Wii was 3rd on that, but it's kind of like the dominance of the 2D games was just like 2D Mario games saved basically gaming, essentially.
I would agree.
And now we haven't gotten a new one in 8 years, and it's just kind of like it doesn't really, I don't know, it kind of seems like something happened along the way, and I think that something was basically the development structure that they went with the new Super Mario Bros. Games was simplicity and easiness to grasp, because there's a limited amount of mechanics compared to 3 and World. Between each games, there's nothing really that new added between DS and Wii, and that's pretty accessible. And but just by New Super Mario Bros. DS, people are already criticizing how alike it was to other 2D games, and it really it kind of got old after four games, and that's why in my eyes, the New Super Mario Bros. Series is just a small portion. It's just a small series, and it doesn't really fit in to the overall 2D series like the early 2D games as well. It all just feels like the same game.
Okay, maybe, but there are definitely still major innovations that happened with the new 2D game, new 2D series, like multiplayer. New Super Mario Bros. Wii introduced 4-player multiplayer on the system, which completely changed the scope of the game. Games before that, all the 2D games before that were very much single-player experiences. You could technically play 2-player on Super Mario Bros. 1, but it was not anywhere near the same. You were basically just playing 2 separate games alternating. Whereas live multiplayer that New Super Mario Bros. Wii and 2 and U all offer completely makes it a very cooperative experience, and I would argue some of the most fun I've had with any 2D Mario experience or any Mario game at all has been playing multiplayer New Super Mario Bros. Games, because the amount of depth that adds to the experience and being able to share with friends is just, you cannot discount that, and the older games just have not had the opportunity to really shine in that area.
Yeah, but multiplayer is more of a sign of the times.
Well, I would disagree, because Super Mario Kart had multiplayer, and there were plenty of live multiplayer games early on in and in fact at the time that New Super Mario Bros. Wii came out, online multiplayer was already starting to very much take hold and basically replace couch multiplayer. But Nintendo decided to do it anyway, and it's been much
and
more.
Nintendo did have technical multiplayer in Mario World, but they just didn't. It's less about, oh, they suddenly realized that this would be a lot more fun, but and more about, oh, hey, we finally have the hardware for this.
I don't know if it was really hardware intensive.
It was more like I think it was more having the tools to make levels that would really be more akin to multiplayer. And Wii does that well. Wii does that very well. But I don't know if that's really says that much about this. About like, oh hey, I think it's just more games with multiplayer then. And even online multiplayer. That's DS benefited from that. New Super Mario Bros. 2 benefited from that. And another thing is like I feel. So something I feel about the new games is like they're more like they're more like, how do I say this? They don't define the eras of the Nintendo games. They just kind of are like the polished versions of what Nintendo's doing at the time. And like, because like on the SNES, they had nothing like Mario World, but on the Wii U, you basically have New Super Mario Bros. U and Mario 3D World, and 3D World is already just a better version of New Super Mario Bros. U, and like Nintendo, New Super Mario Bros. Just feels less like Nintendo's crowning thing, and more just like, hey, we can do this pretty easily. This isn't some crazy innovation by itself. It's just showing what we've done so far. It's like New Super Mario Bros. U was a tech demo basically. It started off as New Super Mario Bros. Me, and it was basically a tech demo for the Wii U in 2011. It's like it more shows what Nintendo's done rather than Nintendo showing off like. Man, I'm saying this terribly, but like you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying.
No, I do. And I do agree that the later 2D Mario games, New Super Mario Bros. 2 and New Super Mario Bros. U, very much suffer from not being, Nintendo's very best on any given system. But I would definitely say that Wii and DS are absolutely some of the better games on their respective systems. And, if you want to make the argument that, oh, but all of the games aren't, necessarily the best on their systems, we could go back to Super Mario Bros. 2 and Super Mario Bros. Lost Levels and show that, not just because an entire series isn't perfect throughout, it doesn't mean that the series as a whole is, objectively worse, because, every series is going to have some duds.
Yeah, and I'm not pointing to New Super Mario Bros. 2 and U as totally different, because like on the Wii, I think the 2D, New Super Mario Bros. Wii was very. It felt like it didn't feel like a crazy innovation by itself. It just felt like, hey, this is what a typical Wii game looks like. Same with DS.
Perhaps.
Let's see. I think by themselves, the games are pretty good, but I think the series getting worse for me just makes me as not appreciate the era of New Super Mario Bros. Less.
Well, would you say that the fact that Paper Mario is getting worse makes you appreciate Paper Mario less?
Yeah, I think that it makes me appreciate it less more for the overall like thing of 2D Mario games, but I think Paper Mario getting worse. If it had gotten better, I'd be more excited about the future, obviously.
Well,
but since the games have gotten worse, like I'm just like, it makes me kind of be like, oh man, it had something great and they kind of floundered it.
Yeah, but the other thing is that I do think that Super Mario Maker 1 and 2 definitely have shown that Nintendo still very much has interest in their 2D games, and the fact that they brought New Super Mario Bros. U to the Switch shows that they still have ideas, and I would bet on seeing a completely fresh 2D Mario experience within not that long into the future. But if Nintendo had had such confidence in their old 2D games, why did they wait almost 15 years to start it back up again after Super Mario Land 2? What? I mean, it's because 3D took over. So if the 2D games were such a, revolutionary experience that could not be forgotten, then why did Nintendo basically completely abandon them in favor of 3D and not wait to bring them back until they knew that they could pull it off correctly on the DS, and they very much did.
Yeah, I think I don't know what goes on in their heads or why they do things, but 3D was definitely the trend at that point, and the GameCube controller and 64 controller, there was pretty much all 3D games.
Yeah.
On those things, and
which they did.
They kind of realized, like, I think it's that's less an indictment on the old 2D games, because I think Nintendo loves Mario World, and I think them not bringing back the games says more about people wanted 3D games, and they're probably they might have been a little afraid to release another 2D game, especially when 3D games are doing so well. Because I think Miyamoto said Mario World was his favorite game. But as far as that goes, like, I blame the old 2D games less for not releasing a game than the new ones, because we have plenty of, like, 2D games are we've crossed the point where we mix both of those together at this point.
Yeah, that is true. All right, well, our time is done here. We have to do some closing statements now. So,
right.
Would you like to go first, or?
Sure. Oh man, right. I hate talking bad about the new 2D games because I love them so much, but, like, the more I think about them and look into them, the more I realize how similar they are, and by itself the games are pretty fun, but a lot of people were turned off from the series by the end. And even though New Super Mario Bros. U sold decently, well, like 5 million or something, it, if you look at consensus from fans, they're like, oh yeah, this feels the same. But it is a fun game, and I do appreciate what New Super Mario Bros. Did and how it revitalized old 2D games. But at the same time, I don't know if we're gonna get a new one anytime soon, and I think that's kind of to blame. That those games are kind of to blame.
Yeah, and I definitely will admit that the old 2D games were very much a massive reason why gaming as it is today really was able to take hold. But I would also argue that I think that the new Super Mario Bros. Series and the fact that they didn't change much just shows how Nintendo really found something that really worked very well, and how they were able to capitalize on that. And I think that both series of games can very much coexist, and I mean they do, and I do think that they very much bring each something very important to the table, and I would not want to get rid of either of them. So yeah, that concludes the debate.
Good. We'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, make sure to vote in the poll that will be posted. A link will be posted to it in the description.
Yep.
This has been OVERRULED Podcast. See you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.